There are conversations that should have gone better. A pitch that didn't land, a client who seemed interested at first, but then they went quiet, they ghosted you, or a room where you said everything right. You made great connections, but you still walked away feeling like there was something off. See, when that happens, a lot of people tend to blame the circumstances, whether it be wrong timing, the wrong audience, the wrong day. But there's a pattern underneath a lot of those type of moments that almost nobody talks about because it's invisible to the person who's doing it. See, you're sending a signal that you don't even know you're sending. And it's costing you a lot more than you may realize. But by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what that signal is, why it works against you, even when your intentions are good, and that one shift that changes how people receive and perceive you when you're in a conversation. So, I want to start off by sharing the experience that I had last year. I was having a conversation with one of my mentors, and it was going good. At least I thought it was, because out of nowhere, he stopped me in the middle of that conversation. We were talking, I was explaining the things I was working on, I was answering the questions that he was asking me. I thought that we were having a great conversation. I was being open, I was being clear. But then, like I mentioned, he just stopped me. He paused and just was said, like, hey, as your friend, try not to use modifiers when you speak. And I'm not gonna lie, I was completely caught off guard and I didn't even know what he was talking about. But thankfully, he took some time to explain it to me. And what he explained was that a modifier is when you say something like, I'll be honest with you, or I'm not going to lie, before you make a point. And his question to me was real simple. Why are you telling me that you're about to be honest? What does that actually say about everything you said before it? And what really got me was this. As I was answering his question that he had asked me, right? That question, I caught myself about to use another modifier again. And the words were just like forming up in my mouth. And I had to stop myself mid sentence after what he explained to me. I was about to do it because that's just how automatic it was. I've been doing it my entire life and I never even noticed it once. So if you've ever said, to be honest, or I'm not going to lie, or I hope you don't take this the wrong way, then you've been doing it too. Well, psychology tells us about this and why it matters more than you think. See, there's a concept that's called effective forecasting error. Let me say that again, effective forecasting error. And it basically means that we human beings are not good at predicting what will actually make other people respond positively to us. You would think we're good at that, but psychology says otherwise. See, we think that adding certain phrases like phrases that will signal openness or it will signal that we're an honest person or signal that, we're being transparent. We feel like when we send out those signals, when we use those phrases, it's actually going to get people to trust us more. Now, some people do this consciously, and sometimes it just may be unconscious, similar to me. Like when it's just automatic programming where you get used to saying certain things or using certain phrases. And, it's not even like you're consciously doing it, but it's a behavior or a habit that you developed over the years. And as a result, when you talk, it comes out. But see, research consistently has shown that warmth and feeling of being understood, it carries far more weight than any verbal reassurance that we can offer somebody. So when you say, I'll be honest with you, you think you're building trust. But what the other person's brain is actually registering is, why do you feel like, or why do they feel like they need to say that? Why do they feel like they got to say that to me? See, you're not trying to deceive anyone. That's the key. I'm not saying that you're doing this intentional. It's not a deception mechanism. It's something that's automatic. But there's still an impact that that phrasing has. See, the phrase does the actual opposite of what you want it to do or what you intended it to do. It actually introduces a flicker of doubt right where there was absolutely none before you made those statements. So now, here's where it gets a little bit deeper. There's a second concept. Follow me now. It's called costly signaling. So, the second concept is called costly signaling. Okay. And in communication, restraint actually signals more than volume. What does that mean? When someone chooses not to over explain, not to pre-qualify everything that they say and not to fill every single silence, it actually reads as confidence, right? It reads as someone who's grounded in what they know and doesn't need to be validated or doesn't need to validate what they're saying. See, when someone does the opposite, when they layer on a whole bunch of extra language and they're trying to convince you before they've even made their point, it's going to read as anxiety. It's going to read as you're not really confident in what you're saying. But it's not going to read as dishonesty most times, but oftentimes it's just going to come off as like you're anxious, you're nervous, or you're not really, grounded in what you're saying. See, and when that happens, that anxiety begins to erode the trust that you were developing with that person. So you don't want that to happen because that anxiety can erode trust as well as other signals that will give off the fact that you're confident. So you're actually optimizing for a signal that backfires when you use these type of modifiers. And here's the thing, the fix requires you to actually do less, not more, or in this case, to say less rather than saying more. So you may be wondering, where does this come from? And why do we do this? Well, I can tell you this. After that conversation with my mentor, I haven't been able to let this go. It's something that I've been thinking about, looking more into, and studying. And there was also something else that my mentor said that really caught my attention, which is he said that a lot of men, especially black men like myself, we tend to have this habit because it's rooted in a belief that we're not trusted when we walk into the room, right? So we are trying our best to earn that trust with our words before we've even said what we really want to say. See, we will front load with reassurance, we pre apologize, and like I was doing, we sometimes will use modifiers. And what's really painful about that is the very thing that we're doing and trying to use to close the trust gap is actually what's sending out a signal to the other person that there is a gap that does exist. So, one thing that's so important to realize is that you cannot talk your way into trust. I can't. We can't. None of us can talk our way into getting somebody to trust us. See, trust is built when what we say lands effectively without any disclaimers, without any hedging, and without us having to try to pre sell our credibility. Trust is something that's built by simply effectively communicating what you want to say to the other person. So comment below if you've ever caught yourself doing this. If you've ever used modifiers, let me know that I'm not the only person. I want to know that I ain't the only one that's been walking around and developing this habit and using these terms just on autopilot, essentially. So what do you actually do to fix it if this is something that you've experienced as well? So you fix it with one specific awareness shift. Before you speak, just ask yourself one simple question. Am I adding this phrase to help the other person or to protect myself? Now, that's a deep question. Most people will not see it that way, but let me say that question again. Am I adding this phrase because I'm trying to help this other person? Or am I asking this question because ultimately I'm trying to protect myself? So if you're about to say, for example, I'll be honest with you, who is that for? Because it's not giving that other person any new information. It's actually us trying to pre-manage how that person is going to perceive what's about to come out of our mouths next. See, that is actually self-protection, even though we often don't think of it that way. Oftentimes, I know for me, I would translate that as I'm being transparent. I just want to let this person know that I'm not about to lie to you. What I'm about to say to you is completely factual. And it's the same thing when we use phrases like, another similar one, like, I'm not going to lie, right? Right. Like, so looking back at it now, it's like, yeah, clearly I wouldn't say I'm not going to lie because I'm not going to lie. Like, I should believe that we've built enough rapport and enough trust to this point that the person knows I'm not lying to them. But like my mentor was sharing with me, the minute I use the phrase, I'm not going to lie to you, it now signals to the person, like, hold on, were you lying to me before? Because now you're stating explicitly that you're not going to lie. So this is important because when you use that phrase, you're actually not clarifying anything. You're actually asking this person to believe you before you've given them a reason to, or Now, if they were already believing you, you're giving them a reason to question their belief and the trust that they develop with you before you use that statement. So, when you remove those phrases, something is going to shift, right? That sentence and ultimately the point that you're making or your message is going to land completely different. It's going to carry much more weight. And the person that you're talking to, they're going to feel it, even if they can't explain why, right? Because the goal is to get to a place where you are so grounded and you're so confident in what you're saying that you don't need to prepare the other person to receive it. You just say it. And that groundedness and that confidence is what people actually will respond positively to. It's not the disclaimers and it's not the modifiers that we sandwich our message between. No, that's not what gets people to trust us. That's not what signals confidence. That's not what gets people to respond positively to us. But the thing about communication that most people tend to get backwards is they think that saying more will make their message stronger, whether that's more context, more assurances, more explanations. They just feel like, yo, I got to say more. But here's the truth: the people who communicate most effectively are the ones who almost always do the opposite. They don't talk a lot, they say less, and they say what they want to say. They let it breathe, and then they trust that the person they're talking to can handle it without them having to soften their message or having to even over explain it. See, some people will say, "Oh man, like that's hard to do," but that's what confidence is. Confidence is believing that the message you're about to say is going to be beneficial to that person, standing on it, not trying to hedge it, not adding any modifiers, because confidence is the one and the I would say one of the most clearest signals of trust that does exist in any conversation with another person. So here's a challenge that I want to give you. Not nothing hard. Just this week, pay attention to yourself as you're talking. You know, it can even be after the fact, kind of analyze it. But next time you catch yourself maybe about to say, to be honest, or I'm not gonna lie, or I hope you don't take this the wrong way, all of that type of stuff. Catch yourself, stop, and just say what you want to say without using any of the modifiers. See, because the people who already communicate this way, they never need to unlearn it. Thankfully for them. But most of us, we spend our entire life trying to say more, trying to impress others, trying to be the center of attention, or, just trying to get people to listen to us, understand us, and trust us. And sometimes that comes in the form of using modifiers. So, you just learn why that can actually work against you. But here's the thing: most introverts never had this problem to begin with. And in 2026, that's exactly why so many introverts are winning. So I want to recommend that you go check out my video. It's called Introverts. This is why staying quiet is your biggest advantage in 2026. Go find out why. Check that video out next, and I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, stay blessed. My name is Jay. See you in the next one.